Good evening. I'm Mike Boehler with the Link Local Network. Link locally and connect globally, welcoming you to the second seminar in the series, Thriving in a Global Economy in Crisis. This seminar is going to be focusing on nonprofits, the rise and thrive of the socialpreneur. I want to thank all the audience for joining us, whether it be in person, on live internet radio, or live internet TV. And before we get started with the outstanding panel we've got together, we need to thank some sponsors who have helped make the event possible. For platinum sponsors, the Illinois Institute of Technology, IIT here in Wheaton, is a national technological PhD granting research university with world-renowned programs in engineering, architecture, the sciences, humanities, psychology, business, law, and design. Mediavine Marketing, simplifying social media, minimizing your efforts and maximizing your results. I Am for Kids, teaching children of all ages how to build an empowering identity for themselves and to challenge each child to live up to that standard every day. Be a strategy group, specializing in increasing the value of client firms by generating growth and improved profitability, innovative growth strategies, and customer experience. Also, Daniel Stoico, accounting professional. He's professionally equipped, personally dedicated, translates your passion into a successful business. Chicagoland Signs, let your signs be our business. And Park Street Media, from concept to creation, experience in live webcasts, DVD monitoring, commercials, cooking programs, and extreme sporting events. Park Street Media is ready to take your vision to the next level. For gold sponsors, we have Manitech LLC, your destination for enterprise resource planning and accounting system needs. Also, ZipBoss LLC, create, market, succeed, where powerful websites are born. ZipBoss. And our non-for-profit co-host, Hands On Suburban Chicago, is committed to mobilizing the compassion of individuals in order to bring about positive change in our community. Our mission is to inspire, equip, and mobilize people to volunteer and take action. It builds vibrant and prosperous communities. Now it's time to turn it over to our moderator, Mr. Jim Treleaven. Jim, take it away.
Today is an interesting topic because we're talking about the rise of the socialpreneur in not-for-profits. Our global theme for the 6-month program is Thriving in a Global Economy in Crisis. And I'll talk a little bit more about how the economy affects not-for-profits as well as for-profits. But first I want to introduce our esteemed panel. And not in the order in which they're sitting, but I'll start with Chris Smith, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Hands On Suburban Chicago, which is part of a national group of volunteer action centers that support non-profit agencies, schools, and government organizations, help them meet growing community needs through effective volunteer engagement and management. We'll get more explanation, too. They fulfill this mission by mobilizing community volunteers to serve at over 180 non-profit centers throughout the north and northwest suburbs, just here in Chicago. Chris's specialty is capacity building by leveraging skills-based volunteers and volunteer management training throughout the organization. Hands-On Suburban Chicago also includes a technology program called Hands-On Tech Corps, which, funded by a grant from Google, serves to increase the effectiveness of the non-profit sector's use of technology. Hands-On Tech Corps team member Michael Desjardins is represented here and will be available to answer any questions and share more about this dynamic program that is helping organizations realize greater efficiencies and help them better address the needs of low-income communities. And is that because you don't want to answer the technical questions, Chris?
I brought my quick.
Okay. Next we have Mike Papadis, who is President and Chief Creative Officer of I Am for Kids Foundation. Mark's an author, speaker, coach, and creator of I Am for Kids. After 20 years of training and coaching adults in the self-development field, he's delivering these same self-empowerment tools to children. I Am for Kids' mission is to empower kids and adults to realize they have tools at their disposal that empower them to progress through life prepared for the challenges that lie ahead. I Am for Kids teaches kids how to create their own core belief system rather than have one thrust upon them by their surroundings. In short, they become their own role models. School becomes the new cool as kids feel safe and encouraged to share their goals and dreams with other like-minded kids. Next we have Janet Derrick, the Executive Director of Naperville Cares. Janet is the first executive director of Naperville Cares, serving as a long-term CARES volunteer. Hence the Socialpreneur, we have people who have spent part of their career in the private sector and have moved into careers in the not-for-profit sector. Serving as a long-term CARES volunteer, vice president of the CARES board for 3 years, and co-president for 1 year. Her first-hand knowledge of the CARES mission, coupled with her extensive business background, made the choice an easy one. Naperville Cares provides short-term financial support and resources to meet the basic needs of local families in financial crisis. Naperville Cares is where the community comes together to ensure that all of our neighbors have access to the resources they need to meet their essential needs. And finally, Chris Campbell, who is the president of Trinity Consulting, an executive network group leader. Trinity Consulting is a consultancy specializing in consumer goods markets. Chris spent 30 years as a corporate marketing executive, the senior vice president of marketing at Mattel, Tyco Toys, Connects, and Publications International. We have Connects at home.
Good.
For the past 5 years, he's also led the executive network group of Greater Chicago, which is a 250-member nonprofit organization that assists senior level managers in job transition. So we have an interesting panel, most of whom have extensive experience in the for-profit sector and have become socialpreneurs in the not-for-profit sector, and are getting to deal with the global economy in crisis, which I will just talk about for a minute to sort of give everyone a perspective about where the economy is. As many of you may have seen, the second quarter GDP was revised downward, as was the first quarter GDP. The second quarter revised downward to 1.3% growth year over year. And to put that in some perspective, generally speaking, growth rates, in order to improve employment generally, need to be about 3.5%. So while we're not technically in a recession, we're in basically a no-growth scenario, and this is in fact, and if you look at the charts, it's fairly stunning, the most anemic recovery since World War II, by not just a little bit, but by a lot. At this point, the typical recovery has been growing at a rate of close to 5%. So we're facing a very tough economy, and there are some exigent factors like the issues in Europe and other things that have had some effect. Actually, China is now, the growth in the GDP in China is significantly slowing. It's still growing, but it's slowing. I mean, that's a significant market for the U.S. So there are some international factors that are affecting the economy generally. The Fed also reduced its forecast for the rest of this year and for next year to, this year will be somewhere in the 1% plus growth rate, and next year they've reduced the forecast to just a little over 2%. So the Fed's own forecast is pretty low relative to any recovery. Now that's compounded by the fact that, and I think it's actually significantly affected by the fact that there's significant uncertainty going into January, where if all of the tax cuts expire, it will be the largest tax increase in history. There are buried in the Affordable Care Act 22 tax increases that are fairly significant as well. And tax increases on capital and death taxes and everything else that will go up. So people are not necessarily thinking that that will all happen. However, even if part of it happens in an economy that's growing at roughly 1.5%, that's significant. Unemployment is stuck at 8.2%. Weekly unemployment filings for new unemployment insurance benefits is under 400,000, which is usually the rate at which employment starts to improve slightly, although quite a number of people have left the labor force. And the alternative measure of unemployment is about 15% if you count all of those people. So it's a very tough economy, and obviously that affects the for-profit sector, and you read about that all the time. However, when I serve on the board of my alma mater, a major university with significant endowment, approaching $2 billion, and fundraising for not-for-profits is obviously very much affected by downturns in the economy, without question. There's uncertainty about the charitable giving tax rates going forward, and there's a lot of talk about eliminating charitable giving as a tax deduction, which obviously is a huge impact on not-for-profits. I don't expect that to happen. Who knows? The other issue for not-for-profits is on the other side, on services. As the economy gets worse, the demand for services, in particular the kinds of things you're all doing, goes way up. So your source of funds goes down, and your demand for services goes way up. So it's quite a challenge. But we, as a society in general, I think, relying on the private not-for-profits is a great thing. Everything you guys do is terrific. So, since you've all gone through this transition, we'll go around and let everyone talk a bit about why they ended up where they are and what your organization does far better than I could read it. So this one we'll do in order. We'll start with Mark.
Fair enough. Well, I guess you could say I'm one of those people who's fortunate to get up every day and do what I was put on this earth to do. So I've been working with adults for close to 20 years when I had the true epiphany moment of taking the things that I've learned and I've been teaching to adults for so close to 20 years and take them to where they're actually the most important, where they can work the best, and that's with kids. I coach youth sports, and I've worked with various kids before, and that's when I had the idea for what I Am for Kids eventually became. But where I think, kind of steering that back to what the topic of today is, technically, I guess you could say we're still a startup as far as a business is concerned. And it's funny because a lot of the people that I talk to, they don't think of nonprofits as a business, right? And I think, well, you don't need to make money. And it's like, yeah, we do need to make money. We just don't get to take it home at night. We just have to put it back into what we're doing, into the mission. So, that's the first thing that when people ask me about that is that it is a business. It needs to be treated and run just like any other business. So therefore, when you're talking about the funds being less available, one of the things that I find when often dealing with several non-profits is there's some really great strategic partnerships that could be put together that the other organizations are afraid to go into. It's like they think there's a finite number of dollars, and it's like, oh no, you could take my money away, or I could take yours and stuff. And there's a word that I coined a number of years ago that has since been kind of become mainstream. It's called co-opetition. There's a lot of things that I had never met the people that are on this panel with me before tonight, but just going through the introductions, like, okay, got to talk to her about this, about this, that we can do some really great things together, that instead of each one of us taking the whole pie, we each take a quarter of it, and we're all a lot better off, and you can wind up creating 4 or 5 more pies together. So, but hopefully, did that answer your question to what you were looking for?
It did. And what, you said that you moved into I Am for Kids because you spent a lot of your life doing similar kinds of things, but what sort of prompted you to, at the time that you did it, to make that move?
Well, there was a story where I was actually out with a couple of my friends. Like I said, I coach youth sports. Everything that my kids are into, I wind up coaching them. And there was the epiphany moment that I had was one night we were myself and a couple of my son's football coaches at the time. He was 8. And we were out at a local establishment watching a football game, just having a couple of beers. We became very friendly. And it's about midnight. Nobody's 3 sheets to the wind, but we've all had a couple on us. And one of the other coaches just kind of looks at me and kind of starts just saying what a great kid my son is. It's every time, if I ever get a chance to get Little Pappy on my team, it's because we don't have first names. There's Big Pappy and Little Pappy, right? And just started saying about how he's going to do it because he's a great kid, he's a natural leader, the kids just follow him, and he started telling me all these great things about my son, which I kind of already knew. And then I did what we've all done, and we're all embarrassed to admit, that we're having a conversation with somebody, but we kind of tune out, and we just start thinking about, on the way home I need to get milk and bread, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, and you kind of re-engage and you come back in. And the question that came into my mind was, wouldn't it be great if every parent could have conversations like this about their kids? And that's when I realized, like, okay, I better come back and rejoin the conversation. And that evening, I got home, I was lying in bed, I was in that stage of sleep before you hit REM, And it was literally as if the floodgates, the sunbeam came through the window kind of thing. I just shut up, I went downstairs, and it was just like a stream of consciousness that just came to me. The next morning, my wife comes downstairs, and I had a legal pad that I had gone through, writing it all down, what the characters' names were, how, what their character strengths and flaws were, etc. And that was what started that. And so it was at that point that I knew that everything that I had done and learned and gone through up to that point in my life was to put me in that position so that I could then take this and go in that direction. And in my opinion, I think literally change the world. Because if 20 years from now, every kid has that belief system and that identity within themselves, how different do you think the world will be 20 years from now if every kid had that starting today?
That's awesome. Very different, I think. Well, that's great, Mark. Thanks. Chris? Same question.
Same question. As far as getting started, I've had several careers. 22 years in corporate. I'm a former teacher, taught grade school, but I'm now at what they call an encore career because I'm really old. But I don't feel like it, and it's actually a dream job as far as being able to use all of the things that you've brought forward in helping people. And so what's wonderful about, we used to be called the Volunteer Center of Northwest Suburban Chicago. We just recently changed our name to Hands-On Suburban Chicago. And one of the things that Mark was saying about the collaboration and working together and bringing people together and convening, I see these economic times as a wonderful opportunity for folks to collaborate and to work together and see if you can share resources. And that's one of the things that we've seen in the last couple of years. And we work with education, we work with schools, we work with nonprofits like Red Cross or Kenneth Young or Clearbrook. And what you were saying about the economy and what's to come is something we feel and we see every day. But it's actually a great time to be in the volunteer business because there's so many people out there, particularly in the business sector, that want to help and do something for their communities and give back, and there's all sorts of opportunities to do that. But I think it's very difficult for the nonprofit sector in order to figure out how to make that happen effectively without the technical infrastructure in place and just trying to survive. They've got that line of people, the dwindling resources and the extra line of people at the door wanting services, and trying to bridge that gap is what we're all about. And so the last few years, what we've tried to do is focus on how we can effectively hold the hand of nonprofits through this process of rebuilding their infrastructure and do capacity building. And it's just as you were saying, Mark, as far as with the whole business side is what I see is really missing. And it's not because people don't have the desire or the skills, it's because everyone's in a survival mode right now. And so the more that we can effectively break things into pieces and partner with great other organizations and work together as a group in order to actually listen to the needs and solve specific problems and just start checking them off, we'll be able to make some headway into this. And I think the benefits both to the businesses and the corporate sector are starting to show too, because they're really saying that the whole service enterprise focus, where if a nonprofit can integrate volunteers of any kind, traditional and skilled, within their organizations, they can make their dollars go twice as far. Or they can do the same amount of work with half the money, which is about what we're going to be expected to do. So if we can help folks adapt to that, I see the possibilities of folks having a little bit of extra money to actually go to businesses and say, we need some new computers and we need some new tools in order to reach more people or be a little bit more effective on the business side. And so our mission is of the heart, but our background is really trying to bring the skills together. And one of the things the ways we do that is to partner with folks that will fund really great ideas. And so we have AmeriCorps Vistas, which are volunteers in service to America. We brought 2 of them with us today. And what they do is they give up a year of their life in order to give back and try and eliminate poverty. So our organization, our staff, has been around for a long time. We were started in 1969. And I actually was board president of the organization for 6 years. And when I saw that it was going to be very difficult to really obtain that perceived value, came inside just from the business side in order to see if we could create some sustainability, because the connector organizations are really needed.
So you work with 180 different not-for-profits?
Actually, we doubled it this year.
Wow.
It's over 370 organizations we actually did training for, and we basically will probably do that again this coming year.
So what kinds of things, give us an example of how you might work with?
Well, one of the things that actually, okay, so last week, one of our organizations, CETA, is in Cook County, and they were just cut 7 positions. They work with people that don't have housing, homeless. They're working with Head Start. They have a food pantry. They really, really need help, and they didn't have an infrastructure in place. And the Cook County funds, are going more into the city than they are in the suburbs right now. And they had the foresight to develop their own 501c3 a few years back. And so one of the things that we did is we brought in a few skill-based volunteers. We did a session, and they identified about 10 or 12 places where they can actually bring in folks from the corporate sector to help them identify some projects in order to build their capacity, but there won't be any money involved at all. It's a little bit of time and resources on both sides.
So do you provide those services with staff and volunteers, or?
For the last 3 years, our SAVE Consulting, Strategic Action for Volunteer Engagement program has been going, and I've been the only staff member. It's been all volunteer led.
Wow.
And we worked with about 140 different volunteers to develop the program. It was all developed by corporate folks.
And you visit all 370 at least once a week?
No, it's our volunteers, and we have a layered system, volunteer leaders, and a lot of just wonderful people that are willing to, give anything from 4 hours a week to, a project that might last a couple weeks. And that's one of the things that we've learned too is that nonprofits will have to be a little bit more flexible when they're working with skill-based volunteers and corporate folks. They really need to have the project identified and be very mindful of people's time. It's not the same as the volunteers of the past.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Other Chris.
Other Chris. In terms of how I got into the nonprofit world, I was obviously in the corporate world for a long time, and I found myself at 56 in a downsized situation, and went through outplacement firms and joined some different organizations, including the Executive Network Group, which was, at that time was 15-year-old nonprofit that typically helped higher income people. And I felt like it was an organization with a lot of potential that wasn't run very well. And as a marketer, I felt like I could add a lot. So I decided to join the board and they really still weren't interested in changing very much. And the executive director left, and I said, well, you know what? I really don't want to go back in the corporate world. I've had, my share of meetings. I've done very well. And I felt like it was an opportunity to give back. So I put my my name in the hat for the executive director role and began to kind of instill some changes into the organization that really enabled it to become much more financially stable. The organization grew. What's interesting in times of crisis, it's wonderful for an organization like ours because people get laid off and they have to have a place to go. And we literally went from, at one stage, when I joined, there were about 75 members, and we went to over 500. And part of what makes it a little unusual is you have to have had a base salary of $100,000 or more to be part of it. But what you don't realize, there's a lot of people that were making six figures that really don't have much savings. They don't have a lot of skills that keep them relevant in today's society. You have a lot of people that are highly educated, a lot of people that are technically oriented, that the word networking is completely alien to them because they've always relied on, if I'm a CPA, why do I need to network if I can balance the books and so on? If I'm an engineer, I rely on my engineering capabilities. So anyway, we created lots of workshops. We created different kind of venues to increase the capabilities of people's networking skills, because about 75% of people who land don't land anymore by answering an ad in the newspaper. It's really about online, social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, blogging, and really letting people know, especially in a social media sense, exactly where they are in their job search, what they're looking for, and most importantly, how other people can help them. So it's an opportunity to give back, and I enjoy it enormously. And one of the things that was some lights went off. One of our members came to me and he said, we have, and even today, 5 years later, I've been running it now for 5 years, we still have 265 people. And so there's always going to be a need. But the individual came to me and he said, we've got all these highly educated, talented professionals who are not working. And I'm involved with a group which happens to turn out to be Hands-on Suburban Chicago today. And I think it would be great if we were able to get these people engaged in volunteer assignments where they could use their skills. And basically my approach to this was, well, as long as there is a defined project and the needs are defined and people are really, especially the professional needs, and we can get interested volunteers to utilize their professional skills in a project, and they can do it while they're still job hunting, I think it's kind of a marriage made in heaven. And it ended up, and I think it's been about 3 years, and we've had a number of volunteers, and some significant, essentially pro bono consulting is what we call it, or project-based consulting. But it's fabulous when somebody is in an interview situation and the interviewer says, well, what else have you been doing other than looking for a job? And they can say, I've been doing pro bono volunteering, pro bono consulting, and this was the project, and this was the result, and this is, what we did. And it really ends up being a win-win situation. It's a win for the person to transition, and it's a win for hands-on because they have access to resources and they can place them in the projects where they're most needed. And it's a win for the other nonprofits because they get literally, what did you estimate the consulting
just over $1 million of services have gone out to the community from
So it's
the Angie members.
yeah, it's really how do you take people in crisis and a need and really kind of put them together, and Chris and her organization have done a fabulous job in really defining the projects, and they come to every one of our meetings, and we match people up with the needs. So it's we're still going strong, and it's really how do you make lemonade out of lemons. And our average member takes about 13 months to land from when they're laid off. And so our big goal is how can we provide them with an edge over other people when they go into interview situations.
So I have an economics question for you.
Sure.
You guys are in a position to kind of see how things are going, kind of on the front line of what's happening. And you see things, like you said, if the numbers have been pretty stable for 5 years, do you see that getting better or worse recently, or is it kind of the same? Or?
Very interesting question. In 2011, we had 257 landings, which and that's the ones we know about. Year to date, 2012, we are running at less than half the rate of landings that we did in 2011. What's also interesting to me is it appears that the rate of layoffs has pretty much subsided. We're not seeing the big waves of people. And what's interesting in terms of our organization is we have as many people coming in as leaving. But the rate of landings, has definitely slowed down. What is interesting is that I see a lot of IT jobs opening up. Lots of IT, and I think that was an area they cut back on, and clearly there's a lot of technology going on that companies can benefit from. So we see a lot of demand for IT folks. We see a lot of demand, believe it or not, for senior level, very senior level people. About 2.5 years ago, I started a C-level group. So you had to have been a CEO, COO, CIO, whatever. And that group is actually, on a percentage basis, has the best rate of landing. Yeah. So it looks like, to answer your question, it looks to me like it's pretty quiet out there. We're not seeing as many layoffs, and we're not seeing a lot of hiring. And so it definitely has slowed down. It seems like, from the standpoint of what we are seeing hiring, a lot of very senior level people at the top, and a lot of infrastructure type things, especially in the IT area.
The economists should come and ask you when they do the forecast.
Well, I think you raised a very good point earlier, and that is simply that the 8.2% just does not capture the real numbers. We see a lot of because I said our average person takes 13 months to land, and a lot of those people either stop looking, or they take interim positions. And you hear people that have MBAs or PhDs, whatever. They're working at Home Depot or Starbucks because you work 22 hours, you can actually get benefits.
Yeah.
But it's tough out there, and that's why anything that you can do to make yourself look better than the next person, whether that is giving back in terms of volunteering, making your job skills more relevant, being able to look like you're in today's society rather than 1965. Your physical appearance needs to improve. Just a lot of things. But there are jobs. They're not as many.
That's very interesting. Thanks, Chris. So Janet.
Me. So, in 2001, I left the corporate world to stay home with my children at the time. They were a little older and sort of running out of daycare options. And was already volunteering through my church to provide financial assistance, and heard about an organization called Rimmel Cares. So in 2002, I started volunteering with them, and then just got more and more involved. So joined the board, and in 2008, it became clear to our board. Our board transitioned from sort of the boards that did all the work to a business board, and then as we brought new people on, they really felt that we needed to bring someone to manage the day-to-day operations. So at that time, then my older boy was going to college, and his husband kept saying, "You need to go back to work." And I said, "Well, how much money do I have to make?" So I have to make a lot of money. So I put my hat in the ring for the job, really not knowing how to be an executive director. I mean, I had a business background, and I knew the mission, and I had a passion for what we did.
Sounds like you would.
Right. So yeah. Right. So I did actually. We were talking before. In first year, I took a boot camp in North Park University for executive directors who had been there in the job for less than 3 years, and I was like, aha. And it was good because my board hadn't worked with an executive director. So it's been 3 years of sort of transitioning, and our board has changed again more into developing into a more fundraising board. So from dealing with the economic crisis, we kind of see a little bit of everything. We actually benefited, it sounds strange, in the beginning while our need for services went up. At first, a lot of congregations in particular and other organizations felt that they wanted to support the people in the community. So we have a very generous community. So our funding actually rose a little bit in that first year. Then there was some government money. DuPage County has a wonderful network of homeless prevention groups and providers. And we work in an effort not to duplicate services, and we work and coordinate and collaborate all through that. And there's segments, this agency will work in this area, and this agency works in that area. And we serve on committees together, so we know where the money is and how to serve best serve the community. So then there was some government money that came in through stimulus that was very well used within DuPage County. Now, we didn't get that money, but we were able to refer people to get that money. But now we're really feeling the effects because the state has dramatically cut back on. So the state had already cut back on homeless prevention funds. The federal money came in and made it up grant, so we didn't lose any grant. Well, now that federal money is spent as per the direction. State money has not been restored, so now it is a real struggle to find the support in the community from the government. So we as a county, and it's being led by Mary Keating of DuPage County, are already meeting, okay, how do we serve this population? How do we best serve them? So collaboration and coordination is the name of the game. We always do that. But what we're seeing from the service side, now I've seen it on the volunteer side, we had volunteers that got laid off. We had a guy in particular who came in, and he was like a networking. He was amazing at networking. He wanted to actually maybe do development, but again, that was a time where agencies were not necessarily hiring. But he worked with our clients on the phone, and when you're talking to someone who's lost a job, he could say, I can relate, I know. So, and then he ended up landing in a job. And that, I think, working in the not-for-profit and being busy and staying focused really helped him land in actually his business. But we see the people that are landing, like we deal with, low-income individuals. So from the side of the government cutbacks, that's a concern of programs that are going to be cut back. But then the other people that have been laid off once and then twice, and they're not landing in jobs that were paying them what they were paying. And a lot of them maybe were middle managers, maybe didn't have the education to begin with that they would need now. So they're not making up. So they might be landing in a position, but they're not making up that money. So that has been a struggle on how do you continue to provide, how do you deal with that assistance. And then again, as this crisis is going to continue, so the funding has sort of stagnated now. So we as an organization have had to make some restaffing decisions and reorganize on how do we best use our limited personnel dollars. So we are restaffing right now to best serve the community and best serve the agency and how to promote it. So we are making those tougher business decisions that you have to make to try to continue to move forward and grow the agencies and keep supporting the people in need.
You do provide financial assistance too, so finances become even more critical.
Right, because we're money's
it's hard
going
to make
out.
that up with volunteers.
Right, and we also have a core program where we take donated vehicles and we fix them and give them to families who need transportation. The problem with that is now the average, some programs kill us, cash for clunkers, and then other agencies, as they're looking for more dollars, there's many other agencies out there buying for cars. Now we actually make they're selling them, which is great. raising funds. But, you know, we try to actually repair the cars and give them to a family who needs transportation. And so as the average length of time for an ownership has increased to 10 years, so the cars are older and the cars are tougher to repair. So we just looked at this, we've declined in the number of cars. Fortunately, we had Continental Motors gave us 8 vehicles last year at Christmas, which was a fabulous event. So again, business partnerships, but we have, if we didn't have that, we would have a significant decline in the number of cars, but the cost has gone up about 40% to repair them. So that's sort of the battle of trying to continue these programs in an efficient manner. So we have partnerships that we're working on. We've got some funding, and we're working with some other organizations to see how we can best stretch those dollars.
Do you see a lot of uncertainty going forward and with various government funding sources?
You know, we're concerned about for many of our clients, we're concerned about the safety net. And we do feel that it's going to have to be made up by private agencies, food pantries, and whatnot. So we're concerned, and I don't see, especially in the state of Illinois, any of the homeless prevention funds coming. So we're going to have to figure out as a community, how do we continue to best serve this population.